Over the years, the game of basketball has changed quite a bit. Looking back on how the game was even played just 10 years ago, you'll see major shifts in how offenses were run, the overall level of talent continuing to increase year after year. And hey, sometimes those changes are for the good or for the bad, depending on the style of basketball you prefer. But one of the bigger changes over the course of the league's history is the amount of games players, particularly star players, compete in a given season. A star player playing all 82 games back in the 80s and 90s was seen as commonplace, with nearly half of the league players playing in all 82 regular season basketball games. Michael Jordan, as an example, played in all 82 games for 9 seasons out of his 15-season NBA career. Jordan, in the second three-peat after his first retirement, would go on to play every single NBA regular season game for those 3 seasons. No rest, no load management, no injury management. Didn't matter the game, the level of importance, Jordan was in the game and didn't miss a single one for 3 straight seasons in his early to mid 30s and still managed to lead the league in scoring for all 3 of those years. Safe to say, it was a different time. You would never see the greatest player in the game today and the face of the league playing all 82 games for 3 straight seasons in their 30s. Even just one season playing in all 82 games, it just wouldn't happen. This past season, you only had 10 players in the entire league play all 82 games. 2 of those players were actually Patrick Williams and Nikola Vucevic. Players resting, load management was always a problem, but it was getting to the point where it was undermining the integrity of the game and the league, and so the NBA knew they had to step in and do something about it. And while they implemented some policies around player participation a few years back, the NBA Board of Governors has taken this to a new level with stringent rules in place around player participation that will go into effect this upcoming season. And in this video, we'll talk about how this could potentially impact the Chicago Bulls and for the league as it goes forward. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I will have a more in-depth, all-encompassing overview of the new player participation policy, or PPP as they're calling it, that was just recently passed by the NBA Board of Governors. I'll have a video on my NBA channel, so be on the lookout for that in the coming days. But I wanted to talk specifically how this impacts the Bulls because I know some people have been asking about it. Also, if you haven't had a chance yet, feel free to check out my NBA channel and One Hoops. I'm trying to get that channel to grow as well. A link to that can be found in the description. And let me know what you guys think about the content over there. But anyway, as I mentioned, the NBA has implemented a new player participation policy that is going to be much more strict than it has been in the past, where there will be rules in place for teams resting, quote, star players, specifically multiple star players, for things like back-to-back games, if a game is on national TV, or the new in-season tournament games, and certain stipulations for road games as well. And if a team doesn't comply with these rules, they will be fined. Those fines will continue to increase each time they fail to comply. But the main thing you need to know about it and how it impacts the Bulls and their roster specifically is how they're defining a star player. The league is defining a, quote, star as any player who has either been selected to an all-star game or an all-NBA team at any point in the past 3 seasons. So, as an example, Nikola Vucevic, even though he hasn't been on an all-star team or an all-NBA team since 2021, the season that he actually got traded to the Bulls, by the NBA standards of this new policy, he would be deemed a star player for this upcoming season and would no longer be the case the following year, unless, of course, he is selected to an all-star game this year. This will obviously be the case for Zach Lavine, DeMar DeRozan, who fall into this category as well, as they are more recent stars. So what would it mean for these 3 guys? And does it apply to any of the other players who aren't considered, quote, stars? Well, surprisingly, if you don't fall into that category of being a star player, there aren't any restrictions or limitations on resting a player for load management purposes, at least based on what I've seen from all the reports and definitions of the new PPP policy. But I imagine they are going to crack down on that if teams start taking advantage of that and resting some of their non-star players unnecessarily. But as far as the Bulls' 3 star players in DeMar DeRozan, Zach Lavine, Nikola Vucevic, it does have implications in terms of how they could potentially be prevented from sitting out due to load management or injury management purposes, which, if you remember, Zach Lavine did miss a handful of games at the beginning of the season in back-to-back situations due to injury management. Now, that's fine if the Bulls do want to rest, say, Zach for injury management, but both DeMar and Vucevic, they would be required to play in a given game where Zach is being rested. One of the new rules is that no more than 1 star can be unavailable in a given game. In addition to this, teams must ensure that star players are available for all national TV and in-season game tournaments. In other words, not even just one star can be out due to rest in those games, unless, of course, they are in fact injured or they meet some other exceptions, which I'll talk about those exceptions in a little bit. Another rule is that the teams have to balance the number of missed games from a star player between road and home games, with a preference being for road games. They also cannot have long-term shutdowns like you see from a lot of of star players toward the end of the season if the season is looking like they're not going to be able to compete for a title. Now, I was talking about some exceptions to these rules, and it mainly applies to older veteran players, in which the NBA will allow for pre-approved back-to-back allowances for players who are 35 years and older, or they have amassed more than 34,000 regular season minutes over the course of their careers, or more than 1,000 regular season and playoff games combined for their career. Now, both Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic do not fit this stipulation, as they are both younger than 35 and haven't played over 34,000 minutes or 1,000 career games. But DeMar DeRozan, while he isn't 35 yet, he's only 34, he has exceeded the minutes and games requirement, which would give the Bulls the ability to obtain pre-approval for DeMar to rest in back-to-backs and to have it be okay if he's also resting with another one of Zach or Vucevic, which would otherwise normally not be allowed. Now, of course, the biggest question is, what's stopping teams from just saying their players are injured rather than resting? And to be honest, I think this is going to be the biggest blocker for the NBA trying to curb the issue of load management with this new policy. Because while the NBA reserves the right under this new policy to investigate the injury and have their own medical team assess the situation, how are they going to determine if a player is truly lying when they say they have a sore knee, as an example? Anybody who is experiencing pain or soreness, only that person is going to know how they truly feel, and a doctor or medical professional isn't going to be able to determine that they're not actually in pain. But be all of that as it may, when I see people asking about how this is going to impact the Bulls, my response is really that it's not. Because unlike a lot of stars around the league who rest at various points throughout the season, that simply is not the case with the Bulls' big three. Vucevic played all 82 games last season, and then aside from missing a handful of back-to-backs to start the season, Zach Lavine finished out the year playing every single game beyond the month of November and finished playing 77 games on the year. DeMar DeRozan, who rarely takes nights off even at his age, played 74 games last season, has already amassed over 1,000 games, something very few players in the league have been able to accomplish. Really, for the Bulls, they should be lauded for not giving into this era of load management and sitting out games for rest. I mean, I hate to be that guy and kind of an old head when it comes to this take, but this is your job. You signed a contract to complete this job and getting paid millions to do it. The least you can do is, if you're healthy, you're not injured, to go out there and play the game for the fans that pay hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars to go see you play. You think if we approached our day jobs like that, where if we're tired, we just want to take days off for rest? No, it doesn't work that way. You get paid to do your job, and that should also apply to professional basketball players. I get that it's a little bit different in the sense that their jobs are more physical than the average person's job, and their health and longevity are critical for the future of their career, but it's gotten to the point where it's undermining the integrity of the league when on any given night a player can say, nah, I don't really feel like playing. Gonna sit this one out tonight. And I respect that the Bulls players haven't done that. If they're healthy, they play. So while these new rules in place are going to be more strict than the league has ever been before when it comes to resting star players, it's not going to impact the Bulls because they don't have a history of just resting players for load management. That, and also the fact that we know the Reinsdorfs are in no way in hell going to pay for the fines for something like this. For a team that refuses to pay the luxury tax, pretty sure they're going to take issue getting handed down $100K, $250K, and $1 million of fines depending on the number of times that it occurs. Like I said, I'll have a more in-depth video on this new policy on my NBA channel because I do think it'll impact other teams throughout the league, and whether this new policy will actually do anything, that still remains to be seen. But for the Bulls, not going to be an issue. I would love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.